Hi there. Let's take a look at the solutions for a derivative rules test. And we are going to look today at part 2. So this was the free response portion of the test. And I'm going to zoom my camera out just a little bit so you can see my full chart. We were given a chart of values for f and g and f prime and g of prime. And then we were told how these new functions related to them. So we're going to find, first of all, the derivative of h with respect to 0. So remember that h is f divided by g. So obviously we're going to have to use a quotient rule. So the quotient rule would be the low, which is the g of x, times the derivative of the top, which would be f prime of x, minus the top, which would be f of x, times g prime, which would be the derivative of the low, all over the low squared, which would be g of x, and that would be squared. Now, we want to find these at 0, so I'm going to make the substitution of 0. Now, let me make a distinction here that I saw when I was grading some questions like this, and that is I had some people who just wrote this without telling me that was the derivative of h. Just for AP purposes, remember you have to say what that is equal to get the point for it. So be real diligent, especially in the free response, to label exactly what it is, because if you say this, the thought is, well, that could be the derivative of something else, right? So you want to make sure you're telling exactly what it is. And now we get our values from the chart. So g of 0, so g of 0 is 1. F prime of 0, so f prime of 0 is 2, minus f of 0. F of 0 is 5. G prime of 0 is 4. All over g of 0. So g of 0 is 1, and we're squaring that. So notice how I'm very intentional, right? And I don't know about you, but I just talk it through, right? I say, okay, f of 0 is, I do that even when I'm working the problems and not teaching them, okay? So if you need to do that to keep you very focused on them, please do. So friends, I end up here with negative 18 as my answer for h prime of 0. Okay, now number 2, I need the normal line of capital G of x. So I see that g of x is f times g. So we'll find the derivative first. F times g product rule, right? So I need f of x times g prime of x plus f prime of x times g of x. And I want this at -1. Ooh, -1. There we go. So I've got f of -1 times g prime of -1 plus f prime of -1 times g prime of -1. Sorry, I got a little happy with the primes there. And so let's get our values from the chart now. So I've got f of -1 is 3. G prime of -1 is 5. F prime of -1 is 4. And g of -1 is 2. So 3 times 5 is 15, plus 4 times 2 is 8, so I get 23. Now, this is the slope of the tangent line, so the slope of the normal line would actually be the negative reciprocal of that. Once we have the slope, then we need the point. So I need g of -1 also. Well, remember, g was f times little g. And we can get those values from the chart as well. So f of -1 is 3, and g of -1 is 2. So g of -1 is 6. Now I have my point. My point is -1, 6, and my slope is -1 over 23. So I got y minus 6 equals negative 1 over 23, x plus 1. Okay, probably the hardest one of the four here is going to be the inverse. So let's tread lightly here. If you'll remember from in class, I turn my table so that I do a table for the inverse of f, okay? So you have data for x and f, and if you remember inverse, we switch x and y. So the inverse actually has the point 4, negative 2. See how I switched the x and the y here? Then I have 3 and negative 1, 5 and 0, 2 and 1, 1 and 2. So we know by rule the derivative of the inverse at 2 is 1 over the derivative of the function of the inverse at 2. So go to your inverse chart. When x is 2, we get 1. So now I'm really looking for the derivative of the function at 1. And we can get that from the chart. So go to your chart, derivative of f when x is 1 is 5. So I know that the derivative of the inverse of 2 is 1/5. All right, just one to go. This time we're looking for the equation of the tangent line. Okay, of m of x. So look at m of x. It looks like I'm going to be doing a chain rule. So let's do the derivative first of all. The derivative would be the outside function, derivative of the outside function. That would be f prime of g of x times g prime of x. And now you need to know that at 0. So I've got g of 0. So g of 0 would be 1. And g prime of 0 would be 4. Then I need f prime of 1. So f prime of 1 is 5. So I know that m prime of 0 is 20. Now remember, that's my slope, okay? I also need a point. So I need the point when x is 0. So I need m of 0, which is f of g of 0. So g of 0, go to your chart. G of 0 is 1. So that's f of 1. Now f of 1 is 2. So m of 0 is 2. Now, friends, that means we have the point 0, 2 is where we're writing the tangent line for. Slope of 20, 0.02. So write your equation of your line. Y minus 2 equals 20, x minus 0. So I hope that helps with the free response portion of what was a derivatives test here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be glad to answer them. Bye for now.